Why are active shooters not labeled as terrorists in America? Terrorism is generally viewed as committing violence for political purposes. America has had domestic terrorists, like the Oklahoma City bomber, so it's not a term reserved only for foreigners. Most active shooters aren't killing people to send a political message. They're just disturbed individuals who are lashing out. I think you're getting your terms mixed up. Active shooter means they are involved in a shooting that's happening right now. I.e., the situation is active. The term you were probably looking for was mass shooter, which is someone who shoots multiple people in the same incident. Terrorists are people who use terror as a tool to achieve a political goal. In other words, if you get the people scared enough, then their leaders will give you what you want. Most mass shooters aren't looking for anything political. In fact, they usually don't expect to survive the mass shooting event. Some are looking to make a statement. Some are looking for revenge. Some are looking for infamy. Some are just mentally disturbed and have a sick obsession with mass shootings, and want to become part of that legacy. In order for a mass shooting to be considered terrorism, it would have to be accompanied by some sort of political demands. A terrorist has a political agenda, which not all shooters do. Terrorists carry out their actions in order to further their political or religious goals. Active shooters are just killing people. Because that term is reserved for Muslims, wouldn't want to confuse the masses now. A lot of mass shootings are generally targeted attacks rather than acts of terror to the general public. Usually terrorism also dictates some sort of political reasoning. I don't think the Crips are really trying to overthrow the establishment. Terrorists often get misconstrued as only of foreign countries or origin. Domestic terrorists would be much more appropriate. I've heard it been said like that in some cases, but generally not enough. Maybe labeling them that could cause even more panic, considering people are out here calling the cops for just about everything. Can't forget your backpack in a bus because it'll be taken by a little robot for bomb disposal. America is in a terrified frenzy and telling folks, domestic terrorists are shooting up your local schools and public centers will cause an uproar in a ton of bad stuff. We couldn't even handle COVID without blaming Asian Americans across the country in a racially motivated unified discrimination front. How do you think they'll handle labeling a white American a terrorist? Ask the general public how they would describe a terrorist and they'll instantly say foreigners are illegals. Trump already openly labeled Mexicans rapists and terrorists, and look how that went. An increase in public racially motivated discriminatory acts towards Latinos of all descent across the country as well. So no, naming a white assailant a terrorist wouldn't fly because they don't believe a white man can be a domestic terrorist. Terrorism equals ideologically motivated. Not all active shooters are terrorists, and plenty of Americans are labeled terrorists. It's called domestic or homegrown terrorism. I'm not American, but I certainly hope that's not the case. The way I see it, the difference between terrorism and mass murder is that terrorism usually has meaning behind it, and usually targets specific groups of people, whereas mass murder is more of a senseless act. It wouldn't make sense for citizens of a country to be immune to that title. That's just how I see it. I could be completely off. Cold sweat smile. Strictly speaking, these active shooters are not organized, and even when they have a political agenda, it usually varies and is not necessarily coherent. Most are literally dudes who are off their meds, need to be on meds, or have taken too much meds, drugs. They're more akin to serial killers and suicidal maniacs. You can argue that their cumulative effect is akin to organized terrorism, but that doesn't mean they're terrorists. Strictly speaking, terrorism refers to a style of warfare and violence with the aim to destabilize, delegitimize or overthrow an existing power structure. It is a systematic attack on a more powerful and organized political power. Hezbollah, FARC, Al-Qaeda, the IRA, Red Army faction, ISIL, ISIS. These are more accurately described as terrorist groups because they are white and not Muslim. Lol. Have you looked up the definition of terrorist? A person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Most of the mass shooters in America aren't doing it for a specific political agenda. Edit. All the replies I'm getting are racism, hate crimes. Hate crimes and terrorism are not the same thing. Maybe we should update the definition, but today hate crimes aren't terrorism. Edit number 2. I'm not going down the endless rabbit hole of trying to align political rhetoric with hate crimes and terrorism. Feel free to go argue with people in our politics. Most of the shooting in America are just angry people lashing out or stirred up by anger related to social issues, and they boiled over. Say there's a minority group A that's discriminated against. If you shoot a person from group A because you hate them, it's not terrorism. If you shoot a person from group A because you want their community to know they're hated, it's terrorism. The world just describes the intent of the shooter, not the severity of the crime. Terrorist is when it is done for political reasons. Not all mass shootings are for political reasons. Majority aren't for political reasons. Most are for hate or notoriety. Terrorism, terrorist is not the same as terror, terrorizing. They both have distinct definitions. A bank robber robbing a bank is a terror and terrorizing, but not defined a terrorist. Shooting a lot of people isn't necessarily terrorism. A random teenager with Asperger's that decided to kill as many people as possible on his school is not a terrorist unless politically motivated. A gang member decided to go and have a shootout at another's house and their family gets caught in the crossfire is not a terrorist. A serial killer murdering 10 women over the course of 4 months is not a terrorist. Labels exist for a reason. Because if we labeled them as terrorists, then the government would actually have to try and solve the problem. Because America is racist. For the same reason, right-wing militias aren't labeled terrorist groups. To name something as a problem, you have to first admit it's a problem. If you admit it's a problem, then you have to act on that problem. Logical beginning to that action is national common sense gun laws. But, America, so you keep it as mentally disturbed individuals that committed a terrible act. And then it becomes a mental health issue because we're all responsible gun owners, and it has nothing to do with America having the highest concentration of firearms in the world per capita. 2A baby. Land of the dead and armed.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.